As an action figure collector, a lot of us have the same dream. And it's not just a dream of having a complete collection and being able to complete teams and, getting to see all those figures on your shelf, but it's the idea of seeing our very own action figure. And this can range from a few different things. It could mean getting an action figure made of yourself. And there's actually quite a few ways of doing this. Years ago, Target had a kiosk in their action figure aisle where you could get yourself scanned and put on different bodies, themed for Marvel or Star Wars. And, it was a moderate hit, but obviously not big enough that they kept it around. There's other websites, things on Etsy, different creators and different people that are way more talented than I am, that for a price, and usually a couple $100s, they will make you as an action figure, and so you can satisfy this lifelong dream. Of course, you could also, become a major movie star. That'll also help you get an action figure of yourself. Then, of course, outside of having a figure made of yourself, there's also figures of exactly the character you want, and customized is a big part of this. And then, of course, there's getting an original character, someone that you've dreamed up, like this Make-A-Wish Foundation KB Toys exclusive that helped a young child make his character Razor actually as a figure on shelf. Well, there was a contest back in the vintage days for Masters of the Universe that embraced this last concept, getting to create your very own character who could be completely original and would then be part of Masters of the Universe. The winner not only got his figure made, but was going to get a college scholarship, was going to get to be quote-unquote president of Mattel for the day, and get a whole Disneyland vacation package, since Mattel was in Southern California. Now, of course, not all kids out there are designers or, understand the fundamentals of character design, but that didn't stop hundreds and thousands of children around the country from submitting their concepts. And while I wasn't there in the vintage day working for Mattel, I did enter this contest myself, as did a few friends of mine. One of the things Mattel did to try to make it easier for kids as they struggled with design was to put out some sheets showing how you could mix and match pieces to make your own Masters of the Universe character. And while these pieces didn't always show up, at least they gave kids some kind of fundamental jumping off point. And a lot of concepts were sent in, and Mattel got a lot of publicity over this contest, with kids from all over the country sending in their designs, and they would range from, the fully rendered to the crayon and pencil. But it was a great way to involve kids, and it was a great way to fulfill a fantasy of getting a character you created actually made as a kid. And some of the designs were even featured in some of Mattel's promotional material and in comic books and different Masters of the Universe magazines as a way of continuing the contest and showing how much kids loved He-Man, whether they were drawing their own characters or recreating drawings of existing characters. Connecting with the child fan base was so important for the vintage line because, well, there really were no adult collectors back then. It was all kids. Well, when it was rounding up, I don't want to say all said and done because there were 5 runners up, and kids were then allowed to call a 1-900 number because, the 80s, and vote for the winner. The runners-up did receive a bunch of Mattel product as a secondary prize, play sets, vehicles, that type of thing. And it wasn't just the runners-up that got this. Quite a few kids were given Mattel product. But of course, every contest needs one winner, and the winner in this case was Nathan Bittner, and his character creation, the Fearless Photog. So he was announced, of course, by Mattel in the He-Man magazine and through, well, there was no internet back in the day, but they definitely made a big announcement that he was going to be president of Mattel for the day, get his college scholarship, go to Disneyland, and his character, the Fearless Photog, that guy with the weird camera head there, was going to get made as a Mattel action figure in the Masters of the Universe line. Now, while Nathan didn't intend for a yellow and blue color scheme to be the way Photog was designed, this was the way it was rendered by Mattel and wound up sticking. It's interesting, though, that this wasn't the color scheme he chose. Unfortunately for Fearless Photog and Nathan, decline in sales for Masters of the Universe was starting to happen at this time, and the line kind of petered out. To say it was another great concept canceled before its time is an understatement. But for various reasons, the overshipment of tertiary characters, too much product on shelf, meant that the line was done, and Fearless Photog did not get his figure. It didn't stop fans from doing custom versions of him throughout the years, everything from artwork showing what he could look like to actual 3D posable action figure customs were showing up on fan sites, well, once the internet showed up, to show what this long-lost figure could have looked like had he actually been made in the Masters of the Universe line. But that would be a tale for another time. Even some of the runner-up figures were getting custom figures made because, everyone saw the runners-up in the 1-900 ad, and other characters got the hearts and minds of fans and decided that they would make custom figures of these to see what they could look like if they had been chosen to be part of the line, or in this case, what it would look like if we did it in classics for Compactor here, who was one of the runners-up. Well, fast forward to the 30th anniversary of the brand in 2012, when I was the brand manager, and not just a kid collecting the line, as it was with the original contest, and we wanted to come up with something that was going to be really special for the 30th. What could we do that was different from what we'd been doing the past few years, pumping out all these great collector figures in the classics line? And, we talked about different areas of media we could explore, but there were some things we didn't have access to, like the '87 movie or Filmation at this time. So what were we going to do? Well, I was chatting with Bill Benecke, one of the designers at Mattel, and regarding the Super Howard Cyclone figure, he was telling me about how this figure, he found it first on the shelf. He'd never heard of it before, and he just saw it at a toy store. And this really appealed to me because I'm really about the emotional connection to toys. That's really what Spectra Creative, my consulting agency, is all about, is starting from that emotional standpoint. And that conversation with Bill got me thinking, for a lot of fans, their very first introduction to the Masters of the Universe brand was not through Filmation, not through the mini-comics, not through the Four Horsemen, but through the toy store, and through finding these figures for the very first time as a toy. And I'm really big on the idea of toy as medium, the fact that toys aren't just a product. So that birthed the idea of doing the 30th anniversary line of introducing 6 new characters, one released every other month, that would be toys first. They would be introduced to the brand as a toy. So it was clear from day one we wanted to try to find a way to get Fearless Photog to lead off this series. And that meant finding a way to contact Nathan Bittner and work out some legal issues because paperwork from the vintage line and the vintage contest wasn't exactly around anymore. Then we would bookend the year with a new Create a Character contest. So that way it started with the winner of the original Create a Character contest, finally made as a figure, and ended with the new one. But that meant I still had 4 slots to fill if we were going to have 6 original characters introduced for the first time as toys, and fans would encounter them not through comics or TV or movies, but in toy form. I had to find 4 more people to design Masters figures. Well, the first thing I did was reach out to some former Mattel employees who had worked on the vintage line, but either they weren't available or they wanted big bucks in order to make a figure, and we had absolutely no budget for this. It had to be done out of the love for the brand and love for toys. This was not something that had a paycheck attached. So with that out of the way, I then started reaching out to big comic book writers and artists of the time. This was 2011, 2012, hoping that maybe I could find some big names who also love Masters. Well, the only one who answered my call was Jeff Johns. We had become friends doing Green Lantern, and he was also a huge He-Man fan. So he said, absolutely, I will totally do this for the love of the brand. So he was the only one I found who was willing to do it. Everyone else wanted money. So that meant I still had 3 slots to fill. And management said, well, why don't you try just having those 3 slots designed by current people who work on the brand, since most of them are under the roof here in El Segundo, and you don't have to go around tracking them down. And I was like, well, great idea. Well, it seemed obvious that the Four Horsemen should be one of them, since they were kind of MOTU celebrities, and it sculpted every Classics figure, as well as the 2000X series, and they were overjoyed at the idea of getting to create an original character for the line. So, all right, that checked off one more box. And then Terry Higuchi, who was the current designer on Classics at the time, seemed like another obvious choice, so one of the slots was assigned to him. And at this point, management was basically sick of me wasting time and money trying to track down vintage creators or comic book creators to work on the line, and basically threw their hands in the air and said, You just do it yourself. People know who you are. You're on the boards. Like, you have a reputation as a He-Man quote-unquote celebrity. You should take one of the slots. And my reaction was basically like, well, obviously I would love to do that, but the fans are going to think that I had alternative motives, and I'm really, dealing with the mob is not something I want to deal with. But management was basically,
this task was appointed to you.
So I got the slot. So that is how one of the slots fell to me, one to the Horseman, one to Jeff Johns, one to Terry, and then the final slot was going to be the fan contest winner. So, all right, we had 5 slots that were going to be relatively easy to do. Jeff submitted a character called Sir Laserlot that he actually submitted to the original contest, and when he told me about that, I said, oh, I'm going to do that too. So I also did the figure that I submitted to the original contest back in the day, Mighty Spectre. And of course, I'll get into more detail on all these characters when I get to their individual videos, of course. The 4 Horsemen contributed Dragoman, which, of course, when we told them to design a figure, we didn't expect him to have a giant head, giant wings, and a giant tail, and come with a ridiculous amount of accessories, meaning he was extremely expensive, but I pushed to get him made and all the accessories. And then, of course, there's Fearless Photog. So, as I said earlier, this was going to involve a little bit of digging on my part because we had to get in touch with Nate Bittner. And, well, let's just say that's a longer story.
Good question.
So, Fearless Photog was in the line because I did get in touch with Nate, and he was a great guy, and I'll go more into detail on this when we get to the Fearless Photog director's commentary video. But it's great that he got to kick off the line, and to complete that 30th anniversary subline, we had our Masters of the Universe Create a Character contest. So we announced this on the back of the shipper box for several figures that were coming up to let fans know that this was going to happen and they should start thinking about a character they wanted to make, with the full contest rolled out at San Diego Comic-Con at our fan panel. And we established some rules like A, the figure had to be signed over to Mattel legally. You couldn't do a character that had an existing name, like don't submit a character named Spider-Man or Batman. And you had to use about 50% shared parts, so it couldn't be a fully tooled figure like Ram Man was. So at least we knew that we'd be able to afford to make the figure without breaking the bank. And we got a lot of entries over and over. Some were toys, some were drawings. These images I'm showing here, some of them I think may have been from the contest. A lot of them are ones I was able to pick up online. So forgive me if some of these are actually contest entries and some of them are just images I found on Google. But visually, they represent kind of the type of figures we were going to get, even when I have a repeat figure in there. Whoops, should have edited that out. But yeah, we had a lot of different concepts, of different themes. Some submitted as toys, some broke the rules because they were clearly too many new parts, and others were just really great designs. So we had a judge panel. We had 2 members from each department: packaging, design, marketing, legal, and planning. And we each sat in and judged who would be the winners. To ensure every single judge saw every entry, we were all given customized stamps that said it was reviewed by that person. I kept my stamp because it said reviewed by Scott, and I still have this stamp, and I use it all the time. I love it. Great souvenir. And after thousands and thousands of entries, which piled up in my cubicle, because of course I had to run all the logistics for this thing, we had our winners and our runners-up. All of the runners-up had their figure rendered in brand new artwork that we commissioned, and they received a 1-year free subscription to Classics. And then the grand winner, of course, would not only get this artwork and a subscription to Classics, but would have the added bonus of having their figure made. We did have one runner-up that had to be disqualified for breaking the rules about publishing images early, but since he still technically was a runner-up, he still got the subscription. But unfortunately, we couldn't include him officially anymore as a character, and he had to be kind of canceled out. So the winner of the whole thing, which you may know if you're following MOTU Classics or if you're new to this and new to the channel, was a character named Castle Grayskull Man, who was created by Daniel Benedict. This is not the art he submitted, but it's some pretty cool art I found online of the character. So it's essentially Daniel imagined his character as if Castle Grayskull was a character and came alive. And he definitely got bonus points, as far as the judging was concerned, for doing things like incorporating the swords from the flag of Castle Grayskull as the swords he carried, and other details, like on his shield. And like the runners-up, he got original artwork created of the character so that they could all be rendered to look kind of the same, if you will, and would fit into a nice grouping of the runners-up and the winners. And unlike the other runners-up, Daniel got his figure made. So you can see he had about 50% new parts, new boots, new chest, new shield, new head, but he also reused parts like legs and shoulders and arms and things like that. And he actually became a very popular character. Like I said about those details, his shield was the shield from the Castle Grayskull Jawbridge door. So those were the kind of details, not to mention the fact that, celebrating Castle Grayskull and celebrating the 30th, it was just, he was a good winner. Although he only won by 1 vote. One of the other runners-up, Rajar, was the second runner-up, and it was only 1 vote difference between who was made. Remember, Rajar, this was actually the submission. It was quite detailed, with a rendering of what he would look like as a figure, with all of his accessories, including a little monkey sidekick. I did think that all the arms were really cool, and there have been some fan customs even that have made Rajar as a figure, so this is probably what he could have looked like had he won, the difference between him and Grayskull Man being 1 vote. Other figures have gotten customs too. This was Doubleheader. I'm butchering. Major Header. That's right. He used his head as his weapon. Also a fan custom of what he could have looked like had he won the contest. We also, as a final note, included all of the original runners-up from the vintage contest as He-Man's allies when he winds up on Trala during mini-comic number 5. And then as a reverse, we included all of the new runner-ups from the 30th anniversary contest as Skeletor's minions from that same battle. And this was basically done so we now had an excuse if we wanted to make these figures. We were no longer going to make them as toys because they were runners-up in a contest, but we could make them because they were now mini-comic characters, which felt right because it was preserving the winners of the contest while still giving us a nice back door to make these characters as toys, potentially. So, it's a great way of including them and having them in a giant battle with each other. I love this panel, especially look at Netta taking on Rajar there. That is just, pure Masters of the Universe gold right there. I remember in particular there was one designer, I'm telling you, who's a huge fan of Netta, who kept bugging us to make a figure of her. And fortunately never happened, but would have been cool. So that was really what it was like celebrating the 30th anniversary. We found a very unique way to do that by, for the first time in classics, doing characters that were toys first and had never been seen before. And it really echoed the way so many fans first encountered the brand in the 80s, where they saw them as toys first. And this emotional connection, the way we were able to, the duality of it really seemed to be a great way of paying homage to the line and celebrating 30 years of Masters while doing something unique for classics that we hadn't done before. If you like this video and want to see more like it, please do subscribe and like it, because it tells YouTube to share it with other people. And that's the goal, is to share toy love. Thanks for watching. Leave all comments below because I answer them all, and I'll see you in the next video.